Hi, Bauwerk Colour here, and today we're painting Marrakesh over Bauwerk Prep Coat. The Prep Coat's been painted about 24 hours ago with a full time to dry and cure. Today we're going to be doing a kind of a standard or a cloud technique. This is done just by stretching out the paint as far as it wants to go, and as you can see we're getting good coverage over the area that we're painting, and then we're feathering out the edges of the cloud. We do this just to help with the overlap between the different sections. This is what will give you some nice interesting texture and some colour variation at the end. You can see here we're starting the second cloud some distance away from the first. That's just to let us disperse the paint nicely over the area, and again just have a nice little bit of overlap between the two clouds. You don't need to follow the exact same pattern that we're doing here today. You can go left to right, up to down. I find doing this particular way just gives some interesting texture, and it's nice on this size wall. You can see here I'm just adjusting the amount of paint on the brush. It's important not to have too much paint on the brush, otherwise you won't be able to spread it sufficiently. Don't be too concerned if your colour doesn't look exactly like this on the first coat. The first coat generally looks a little bit messy, just like with this one looks particularly nice, but it's all going to come together on the second coat. Here where I'm cutting in, I'm making sure I've got a good amount of paint. I'm just following the wall down with the brush, pushing it to an edge. And what I'm doing here is I'm just leaving a good amount of paint on the brush so that we're giving good coverage for that first coat. We're not bothering too much to feather it out on the first coat, but we'll fix that up on the second. We're just making sure we have good color coverage on the first. It's always good to have a little step back and just have a look at what's happening with the wall. Maybe there's an area that you just want to, put a little bit extra paint on before it dries. It's always a good idea to take a step back and have a look what's happening. Again, you can really see where we're stretching the paint out, going back over it a little bit just to make sure there's not too heavy a brush strokes. And then I like to go back over it after I've done an area and just add a little bit of texture to it. That's just a personal preference. There's just the last little bit of this wall to finish from this first coat, just using a real small little bit of paint just to fill in that last little gap. Once that's done, we'll probably give the wall a good few hours to dry. Here we're making really good effort just to spread that last little bit out and feather a little bit away from the last bit, just so we don't have too much paint sitting on the edges. Now we're starting on the second coat. Left it to dry about 3 to 4 hours today, just because it's been a little bit cold here. Doesn't hurt to leave it overnight. I would say minimum about 2 to 3 hours is always good. As you can see on now, it's going on particularly quick. The best tips for the second coat is to not overlap the same clouds as we did in the first. You can see in this instance, I'm starting in the top right corner, whereas we started in the top left corner. That's a real simple way to minimize the chances of repeating the same pattern over itself. Usually find that the second coat goes on a bit easier than the first. The first gets a little bit absorbed into the prep coat, so it makes it a little bit trickier to stretch. The second coat goes on nice and creamy and is really, really quick and easy. Just as the same as the first coat, we're making sure to stretch out our clouds, using up all the paint we've got on the brush. If you've got a lot of paint on the brush, you stretch a nice big cloud. If you've got a smaller amount of paint on the brush, you do a nice smaller cloud. It's another way of achieving some extra texture if you like it a little bit busier. Again, when cutting in, just take your time, be a little bit careful with it. It's best to get the line nice and straight and then go back over it after it once it's been done nicely. So now here with this last bit of cutting in, I'm just going to get a good amount of coverage of paint over the corner. And then once I feel like I've covered it nicely with the even amount of paint, I'm going to come back over it and just slightly feather out the edges a little bit, just so we don't build up too much of a brush line going parallel with the wall. If you're using a darker colour, you might want to brush it out a little bit more, but with these kind of mid-tone colours, generally look pretty good with just a little bit of a feather out over the top. And there we go. This is 2 coats of Marrakesh over Bauwerk prep coat, and now we'll just leave it with a bit of time to dry so you can have a look at the time lapse of it. Thank you very much. Bye.